About to get started. Just before I get started, I'll check to see our colleague to join us. Is that right?
Yes, as far as I know, Tara is coming, so she may just be
Running a few minutes late. No problem.
Yeah.
Right, let's get started. Welcome everyone to the February meeting of the Hadley School Committee, which was postponed by a week due to an assortment of scheduling conflicts, and we are holding it on the first week of March instead, March 3rd. Do I have a motion to call this meeting to order?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Terrific. All right. Annie, would you take us through any adjustments to the agenda, please?
I am happy to. So one that may be happening is when Aisha Anjum arrives, and there she is, never mind, it will not be an adjustment. So I'll take you through the other adjustments to the agenda. Let me just make Aisha closed. Okay. So initially, the agenda read that you would be discussing the 25-26 academic calendar. The HEA has voted on a start date, so we're prepared to have the school committee vote on it this evening. That's an adjustment that the school committee chooses. I have added information to the agenda from Sarah Ross, K-12 Undaunted. In the original agenda, you saw there's a discussion about geothermal. That was going to be you, Mara, and Sarah Ross, and Sarah did email me some information which I linked into the agenda. The final thing is approval of revised job descriptions, custodial job descriptions. So Krista Jordan will be taking folks through that at the end of the meeting. Those are all of the adjustments.
Okay, very good. Thank you. At this point, we're going to open up any public comment. If there are members of the public that would like to say a few words, no more than 3 minutes, please raise your digital hand and we will unmute you. Okay, seeing none, we are going to proceed with the rest of the agenda. Item 4, presentation and discussion items, which the first one is our student representative update. And here to update us is Aisha Anjum. Welcome, Aisha.
So you should be able to turn on your camera and unmute. Let's make sure. Yes. So, not sure if you can hear me, Aisha. I do have you as a co-host. Is there something I might be missing?
It's possible she may not be. She is a co-host. She can unmute her video and audio in order to present, but it's possible that she's not in a place where she can do that. So maybe we can just come back to her when she's ready.
Perfect.
All right.
Sounds great.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. Moving next to the approval of the grade 8 field trip to Boston. And here to tell us about that is
It's actually Koki at this point, I believe, right?
All
There's
right.
a change to this. Am I correct, Koki?
Marcel's here, I believe. I think I see her.
Okay. I do have Marcel here. She's also a co-host. Okay. Perfect.
I am here, but Koki, my phone, it's weird to work on my phone. So if you're willing to lead the way, I am here though.
Okay.
Great. Aisha, hang tight for 1 second, and we'll let the Boston crew give their presentation first, and then we'll switch to you. Marcel, Koki, we'd love to hear from you.
And Koki, please know that in the agenda, they have linked the itinerary and all of the information. So the school committee and the public can see it. They have it.
Great. So 8th grade is proposing to continue second year of the overnight field trip. We had it last year and it worked out very well. Basically, we will be going we propose to go May 28th and into May 29th, Wednesday, Thursday. And it's cross-curricular. It's open to every student in 8th grade. It's a field trip organized with First Choice Tours. And they help make all the arrangements for meals, activities, hotels. So that's all that is included in the price. And the goal is to have a cross-curricular experience where the students can learn about past events, present events, can get outside of their Western Mass bubble for some of them. So they will have exposures to science, math, English, history, and of course, civics. The cost includes the bus, hotel, dinner the first night, breakfast second day. For students, we'll need to pack a lunch for the first day or bring money to purchase at Faneuil Hall, and then just be able to get lunch at the Science Museum on the second day. But besides that, they're all covered. It's about, depending on the rooms, it's for 2 beds, it'd be $449. A 2-bedroom, 3-bed, 389, and the quad is also 389. This year we're reducing the options unless there's some kind of special circumstance, just to make it less confusing, because it's a little bit tricky when, some people want 3, some want 2, so we're keeping it to 4 and 3, I believe. Marcel, let me know if that's, and chaperones, there will be 3 to 5. The school nurse, I believe, is also attending. And we'll be going to the Edward M. Kennedy Institute. Students will, this one's a little different than last year. They will participate in a simulated U.S. Senate session and a live floor debate on an actual piece of legislation. So this will tie into their civics, of course. They're going to consider the issue from multiple perspectives, share their ideas, and they're going to learn about the Electoral College as well, which they did in class, but it's, I'm sure, more exciting, out in the world. And this also ties in English as well with persuasive arguments and things. The Science Museum the Boston Science Museum, we went last year and we're going to go again, and that will include science and math as well. There's many exhibits. We'll also do the Omni show, I think it's called, and which is planets in space, but also there is also biology in there and lots of math. So and all this standards are linked in the documents. I won't list all those. And then they will also see the Blue Man group. Again, they saw that last year too. And that one ties in more to English and watching different narratives and things like that. Yeah, and we will have also there's a part of the cost includes like a student watcher for the hotel room floors. So there'll be someone in the hallway hired from outside to make sure that nobody's escaping and going anywhere. So, and that worked very well last time. People were tired, so they were too tired, I think, to even think about leaving, so they were fine. And then after that, I believe the second day, I believe, is the Science Museum. So I think that's all of it. The first night they will have dinner at I've never been to it, but some famous restaurant called Fire and Ice, and that will be included, which is nice. I've heard good. That's supposed to be very nice, but I don't know much about it. And I think that's it, Marcel. Is there anything I'm missing? Marcel is the one who planned this all, so I can't take her.
No, that sounds perfect, because that sounds like it exactly. Yeah. Yeah, we'll be back. So we'll be back in time on Thursday afternoon for any students who need to attend the senior dinner, or the senior night, if they have siblings that are graduating. So we'll be back in time for that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we're leaving early afternoons.
All right. Well, that's an action-packed 2 days, and it sounds like such a great trip. We are so lucky to be 90 minutes from one of the most historic and lovely cities in our nation, and it sounds like a terrific adventure. I'm going to open it up to my colleagues for any questions or comments.
No comments for me. That student watcher thing overnight is a new addition I haven't seen before. So I guess I hadn't thought about it. It's not necessarily protecting our students. It's keeping our students from escaping. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
We had it last year too, but yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's a new concept.
Yeah.
Right. All right.
We just used to put tape on the doors.
I'm sure that didn't work.
Oh, no, it worked.
Did it?
Yeah, it did. But
Great. Well, this is terrific. Thank you so much, Koki and Marcel, for presenting. And I'll entertain a motion to approve the Boston trip as outlined.
So moved.
All right.
second,
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Terrific. Motion passes. Thank you so much, Koki and Marcel.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you so
much.
much. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Okay, we're going to move next to the student representative presentation. I believe Aisha had exited and came back and is now co-host. Aisha, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I apologize. My
No
internet's
worries at all.
pretty good. So now it's not lagging anymore, which is a really good sign.
That is great. All right, we'd love to hear your presentation, and so it's all you.
All right. Hello everyone. My name is Aisha Anjum, and I am a Hopkins Academy senior. I'm proud to be this year's school committee student representative. I apologize for the delay in my attendance due to illness and schoolwork, and I am very grateful to be here with you all today. So, what would I like to present? For my student representative report, I would like to acknowledge a cohort of student leaders and teachers from middle and high school who learned and were trained to prevent and interrupt bias as a part of the school's hate crimes prevention grant. This cohort is the Hate Crimes and Anti-Bias Prevention Group. So what did they do? What the students did was they decided to facilitate an after-school workshop for the teachers alongside the group mentors, Mariah Laparoff and Sabine Denise Jacques. So what we would like to do next is expand our knowledge and regularly present to the elementary school or middle school once a week or month. And this matters because it is important for everyone to learn how to have positive relationships with all kinds of people. This is significant because these skills can be used in and out of school, such as in a workplace, to contribute to the appreciation of diversity.
Wonderful. Thank you, Aisha. Important work. Appreciate you sharing it with us. School committee colleagues, any questions or comments for Aisha?
I will also say that I had the pleasure, Aisha is such a phenomenal force to be reckoned with as a young woman and a leader. And she coordinated a meeting with me and also two middle school students today during middle school lunch. These students also participated. They're part of this kind of core group of student leaders around bias prevention and intervention and hate crimes prevention. And so the four of us talked today, and they had excellent ideas about how to expand this work among their middle school peers. They're very thoughtful young people that are doing complex and important work and leading it in our school. And I'm quite proud to be associated.
It's always so much more powerful when it comes from students to other students and instructors. So thank you, Aisha, for participating in that.
Oh, no problem. It was my pleasure.
School committee colleagues, any other thoughts or comments?
Second, but thanks, Aisha, for bringing this forward and for doing the work. Appreciate it. Sounds like there's maybe some things we adults could learn. So thanks for leading.
No problem. It was my pleasure.
Christine?
oh, I'm just reiterating what Paul said. Great job, Aisha. I know I haven't seen you since 7th grade, but I'm really proud of the work you're doing. It's wonderful.
Oh my God, it's wonderful to do this kind of work because it helps the community, and that's always the goal, you know?
Very well said.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Aisha, and hope to hear from you again in subsequent presentations. And feel free to chime in and participate in any of the meeting discussion items that we have today and in following meetings. We're excited to have your participation here, and it's very important to have the student voice represented. So thank you. Okay, we're going to move next to the approval of the FY26 preschool rates. Here to tell us about any changes is Lauren Wenner.
Hi there, thank you. So this year we had discussed doing the same 3% increase that we had last year. This seems to be very well in line with other districts and what people are paying for both preschool and for daycare. As a parent paying daycare, I can tell you our rates are actually less, and we have very, very qualified staff, which is always a huge draw for our families. Again, we took just the rates from this year, increased it by 3%, and then rounded it to the nearest dollar just to make the math a little bit easier. And that's about it. Not too much of a change.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from school committee colleagues? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the preschool tuition costs for fiscal year 26 as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move next to the locker room design presentation. And
This
here to
is-
tell us, yeah.
Yeah, this is brief. This is very brief. This is a reminder. The school committee has seen the designs in the presentation. If you recall, we discussed the fact that although Colliers had estimated that both locker rooms could be renovated for roughly $1 million, after hiring engineers, CHA, to do the designs, we found out that to do both would come in closer to $2 million. What the school committee decided upon was making sure that we began by renovating the girls' locker room. So that's where the major renovations will occur. And there'll be two kind of lesser modifications, but important modifications to the boys' locker room, having to do with the restrooms and place for the refs and where the AD's office will be. Humira and I presented to the select board on February 5th. At that public meeting, we also explained to the select board the change in plans, and we just wanted to state it again. So there's no change of any of the designs you've seen. We just thought it was important to remind the community of the slight change in plan now. Doing renovations to the boys is not out of the picture. It's just not what we'll be doing first. Chris, was there anything else regarding discussion of renegotiation of design proposal, or will that wait until the end of March?
That will wait. We do have John Hickok here from CHA.
Make him a co-host.
Yes, and he can actually present, just kind of an update to everyone. It's a little more of an update than what I gave at the last meeting. So a little more up to date and with a little bit more information.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate the opportunity to present. As I think I'm going to be able to share. Let me just try this. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. So as was mentioned by Anne, which was a great synopsis, because it's basically everything that my presentation is going to say. I just have some plans to back it up. But so as Anne indicated, as we dove into this project, had a budget of approximately $975,000. We dove in and developed the existing condition plans. And then develop the program, working with the school officials, and then developing a concept plan. The project came in at around 2.1 million. So obviously there was a disparity in the cost and the budget available, but from an existing conditions perspective, I think you're aware that the girls' locker room is definitely undersized and very bifurcated. The locker room circulation has issues. there's approximately 20-ish showers in the girls' locker room that aren't used, that are in the middle of the room, and that's the right-hand side of my screen here is the girls' locker room. So all of those boxes you see are showers that aren't used, which creates very, very minimal space for the girls to actually either change clothes for their athletic programs and or their physical education classes. Furthermore, the coach's office is elevated. Back in the 60s when this was built, there was an idea that the coaches wanted to be able to see over the locker room, and ADA and people having disabilities as a coach weren't really thought of that much in the designs, and codes today are not going to allow to have 3 steps going into an office. So we that is a definite non-compliance as it relates to the locker room. Furthermore, the restrooms that are there, albeit I think one very, very small, not ADA compliant, kind of in the middle of a room, not very private from that perspective. So want to try to fix that. There was outside the girls' locker room, there was a gender neutral restroom that was developed not too long ago. Reports that we got during our programming was that many folks do not use this restroom because it is a restroom with multiple stalls, and those stalls don't go floor to ceiling. So it's not very private. Therefore, I think when we get to the alternates, you'll see we have another approach to fix that issue, as well as try to capture some of this space to make the girls' locker room the same square footage as the boys in the final condition, so that there's parity between the two locker rooms. Also, locker rooms have many lockers that just aren't used, so it's using up space that we could utilize for other uses. Although the name is locker room, changing for PE class is not something that happens more on a regular basis any longer, and it's really more benches and hooks to leave your bag or your coat and go to class. The next slide I have here is what we're considering phase 1 of the girls' locker room renovation. And as Anna had mentioned, this would be our base bid, would be to renovate the girls' locker room. And really, we felt that the girls' locker room, based on the available funds, not that the boys' locker room won't be done in the future, but based on the available funds, the girls' locker room really needed to be brought up and get some parity to the boys' locker room, albeit it may not be in condition, right? The new locker room will have much more modern finishes than the boys, but the space available for the girls to utilize would be much more in line with what the boys have. It would provide better circulation. In the central core, the way we set this up is, as I had indicated, when you come off the corridor, there used to be that gender neutral multi-stall bathroom here. We've captured that space for the PE office, so that as you enter the space, that coach is in that office, and then as you enter the space, there is a what we're calling the home team locker room. So there's a home team, and then there's a general visitor locker room in the space, and they are bifurcated by what would be the toilet rooms and the singular shower. But the team room has approximately 30 lockers. They are 12-inch wide lockers that go floor to ceiling, or not floor to ceiling, but floor to 6 feet high, so that, from an athlete perspective, those lockers are much more utilized with a bench on the front. In the general or the visiting locker rooms, this would be the locker room that would be utilized by phys ed class or a visiting team that would be coming to play. These lockers would be double lockers, so there'd be one up and one down, so you get double the number of lockers, but they're smaller, and also have more of a bench and hook strip rather than lockers, so that like I said in the beginning, you can hang your bag and or your coat before you head to the gymnasium in a general perspective. And quite frankly, when the visiting team comes, that's what they really need too. They don't really need a locker room. They need a place to change, throw their bag on a hook, and go play. We did create some door sequences within the corridor, so when this is a visiting team, they can go into the gym or out to the field as they kind of through their own separate doors, and the home team can kind of do their separate thing as well. So we're not crossing paths associated with home and visiting teams. And the restrooms, I kind of made a blow up of the restroom over here because this was a bit small. But as you can see, the general or the visiting can come into this restroom. It has 2 toilets and a lavatory. And then the home team would enter into this restroom, which also has 2 toilets and a lavatory, but it also has access to a large shower. And that basically the information that we had received is that the showers aren't used, but they are used on occasion. There's someone who may want to shower. So we wanted to provide the ability to shower and do that in a private situation where you have floor to ceiling partitions, an area for drying and getting ready for your shower, area to take shower, and then leave the space. Also, all of the partitions associated with the toilets would be floor to ceiling so that they are, anti-voyeurism from that perspective. The next slide I have is really what we're considering the 2 alternates to the base bid currently. And what that is these alternates are near the boys' locker room. So they are on either end of that locker room. I'm just going to switch a slide real quick to kind of, actually, I don't have that slide, but nonetheless, this is the corridor outside the boys' locker room. There's currently a restroom here with a janitor's closet. And when you enter the boys' locker room, there are some lockers right here. What we're going to do is acquire that space where those lockers were for a much larger janitorial or custodial closet, as well as 2 separate gender neutral restrooms. So they would have a toilet and a lavatory and would be a single use restroom. So that would be on off the main school corridor. On the other side of the locker room, by the exterior wall, so if you went all the way through the boys' locker room, there's currently what appears to be a sports medicine office, some storage, another storage laundry area, and a restroom. We want to leave the restroom for now, but what we wanted to do was create an athletic director's office out of that old sports medicine office. And to do that, again, they had windows at the top of the wall that overlook that. I guess if you stood on a chair, you could look into the locker room. We want to get rid of those windows, relocate the door because the door is currently here, relocate that door to here, and then add a door here. That way, any gender athletic director can utilize this office without having to go into the boys' locker room, maintain the existing storage, and maintain the existing storage laundry, as well as the restroom. So this is really just kind of a partition cleanup and door with some paint and paper within the office to clean that area up and provide that office. The phase 2, which isn't in here, but was considered as part of this design, would have been the renovation of the boys' locker room, which is very similar to the girls' locker room. And I see, Chris, you have your hand up. Is there something you want to add?
I'm assuming you're speaking to me. There's another Chris that has her hand up too, but I just wanted to add something to this. Number 1, that addition of the AD office, what that's going to do is solve one of the problems we have in the school now, which is at halftime, the refs go down and basically hang out in the teacher's room. And that's where they change into their uniforms for the game and stuff, which means that the hallways are unlocked. for the refs to get down there. What this will do is allow the refs to use that AD office as kind of a home base during games. That allows us to lock the hallway doors so we don't have people walking around the hallways during a game. That's a problem we've been having, and this will solve that problem. And for the alternate one with the gender neutral bathrooms, that will be accessible from outside. We'll be able to just open up the back doors and have the second set of doors past the bathrooms locked. But that will mean no more Santa cans outside. People will be able to access these bathrooms and have an actual nicer bathroom than the Santa can experience that they're getting now. So I just wanted to kind of jump in and explain why these two were chosen.
Points. Thank you, Chris.
So
Before
my
we-
question,
Yep, go ahead.
I have a question about the bathrooms. So the bathrooms that are by the locker room now.
Yep.
That are by the girls.
Right here.
Right. So those will be gone.
Correct.
So that would, and then we would just have the two available bathrooms.
Yeah, right now you have 3 stalls in there.
Yep. And if
This would become 2 separate over here. It's basically
So-
what would happen.
right, but we'd go from 5 down to 2. Correct?
I can't remember if there's if there's a urinal in there. I think there was 3 stalls and then 1 over here. So it would be 4 to 2 is basically what would happen.
Okay.
Chris, can I ask a question along with you?
Yeah.
I guess John, yeah, to follow up on Chris's, like, if we lose those bathrooms by the girls' bathroom and those 2 gender neutral bathrooms, those will be accessible inside and outside, right?
Correct. Yeah, so
Okay,
there's a
so
set of
those-
doors here, like Chris said, and
Yeah.
this is the exterior door. These can be locked, so exterior baseball can come in and use those toilets without getting access to the whole school.
Okay, so basically those will be the 2 bathrooms that'll be available during like basketball games.
These would be 2 bathrooms available during basketball games, correct? Yep.
And I to build on that, right now, the common understanding is that that whole corridor, that side of the building is the boys' locker room. So will signage be taken away that calls it the boys' locker room? Because people may not want to enter anything in that area if they think that they're going into the boys' locker room to go to the bathroom.
Yes, the boys' locker room door actually the corridor is here. When you go into here, there's a door currently right now that goes into the boys' locker room approximately here. It's moved way back here now. So that door would have boys' locker room sign on it. That would have janitor, and these would have gender neutral bathroom signage on them. So this would just be an alcove with a drinking fountain in there.
I have a question. Is there a reason why we wouldn't want to put the janitor's door, on the hallway side of things so that if the janitor's door was open, then maybe it might obstruct the flow of people going to the bathroom?
Yeah, so what we're trying to do is minimize cost, right? So we're building this wall. This is an existing wall, so I'd have to try to cut a hole in a masonry wall. Not that it's impossible, but cut a hole in a masonry wall, and it's not very efficient when the door is here and the room is really long. You want to be able to store on either side, but it's always something. And they have a larger piece of equipment that's stored in the boys' locker room right now that they would like to get out of there and store in this closet. It's kind of almost like a ride-on machine type thing.
All right. Now, Annie and Chris, are we making a conscious decision to go from many more bathrooms down to 2 because bathrooms are not really utilized, and therefore we don't need them?
Yes, that's exactly it. Excuse me. Apparently these bathrooms aren't used that often at all, during the school day at least. So we felt that, this was the best option. Again, going, from a cost standpoint, we obviously need to keep the cost down. And, you don't see all of the bathroom stalls being used at any one time. We just felt that this would be a good solution, would still offer bathrooms at that end of the building. But again, as they're hardly used at all during the school day, it wouldn't be affected by having less.
Yeah, I guess as the times that I'm using it, and I'm not a student, clearly, are when there are functions in the gymnasium. That would include basketball games, graduation, band, and any of those sort of special functions. And many of those it's a pretty full house. Like I think of graduation, it's a pretty packed house. Are we saying it would be okay for that level of people, that number of people, to narrow in on 2 bathrooms?
In a graduation ceremony, you could open the locker rooms as well. So you would increase the number of restrooms that you had. If you, in a graduation ceremony where you're not utilizing the locker room, you have 4 more toilets in the women's locker room. And the boys' locker room has 2 existing that would remain, plus we're adding 1 to that corridor. So in that scenario, that would be available. Now, if it were a basketball game, whether it's a boys' game or a girls' game, and I'm not sure if you have them on the same night or not, but you know what I mean, whether the locker rooms would be open or not open and available for use as a restroom is another option. And I think, as we were going through it, Chris and the crew trying to conserve money, but at the same time, try not to build the restrooms out so much that they're only used once a year, as opposed to, is there another option to clear that up? And I think potentially there is, as it relates to the locker rooms, if that's a function that can be handled.
So we're saying, like, if there's a girls' game, then we could make the boys' bathrooms available to people. If there's a boys' game, we're making the girls' locker room available to the public. Is that a scenario we're envisioning, Annie and Chris? Can we design it so that it's welcoming and people know they can go to the bathroom there?
I would say yes, and I was going to respond anecdotally. When I've been at the kinds of events that you're describing, Humira, and used the restroom, of course, I'm standing there the entire night. But I can say I don't think I've ever encountered a situation where I'm waiting, like every stall is full, even in our existing scenario that we have now. So I think you make a really good point about having a lot more people at events like graduation and other things. But I again can say anecdotally, I've never experienced a line or even the bathrooms being full. And if that, as John pointed out, if we felt as though we needed to make more things available, then we can announce that. I think the emphasis was on trying to balance cost and prioritizing ADA compliance as well.
Yeah, and I think so long as we can use the boys and girls bathrooms in the locker room for that overflow situation, I think we should be okay. Paul?
Yeah, thanks. I agree. I mean, I think these are good questions about bathrooms. I haven't seen a line before. I like the revised access on the boys' side, because I do think it's confusing now that while it's accessible to all, it does seem like it's in the boys' locker. So this will make it more clear. One question about the overall design, though, of the girls' room. I guess 2 questions. Has Athletic Director Fred Ziaglo looked at that? My thoughts might be that exit towards the back of the building, the door there, it is going to be where the band plays. It is going to be this right by the student section. Maybe we could flip and have the home team on there coming out in and out by the student section, and the visiting team being closer to the front of the gym.
Actually, I can see a smile on John's face. We did have it reversed.
Yeah.
And when I showed these to Fred, he said, oh, no, the home team has to be, you know, where it currently is now, because they always come in at that door. So we actually moved them where the general visitors locker room, you know, we reversed the two of them
Okay.
based on how Fred said that, you know.
So we can move the band a bit, I guess, because that's the same spot.
They always came in of that door because they didn't have any other way in. So it kind of, you know, made sense, but I kind of agree with Paul that, you know,
I mean, is it something we need to decide now? Who goes where?
The room is slightly bigger, and the locker room the locker is different.
Okay.
The layout's different. So we had it up here and we flipped
I
it
see.
based on the athletic director's. Now, if we need to flip it back, it's not like we
Yeah.
can't flip it back. But as you said, this was the only access to the gym from the girls'
Right.
locker room. This storage, that's the storage door right now. So when we created this hallway and made the storage slightly different, that allowed for two means of access to the gymnasium, similar to the boys' locker room, so that there was some parity there. We wanted to make sure that there was parity in both scenarios.
Okay. I mean, I guess we could find another place to put the band, and then.
Well, and
Yes.
you bring up important questions, and it sounds to me like there's flexibility. So if there was another round of questions, just to make sure, then Chris, Paul, John, connect again with Fred and just ask that question again. I would say, like, are you just because we've always done it that way, does that mean we should continue to do it that way? What would be the ideal case scenario? Paul, please continue.
That's it. Sometimes it's maybe not best to have the visiting team run right by the student section when things get spicy. So.
Really good point. Yeah, thank you. John, are we coming close to the finish?
Yeah, I got a couple. Just wanted to kind of mention where we are budget wise from the project, and I think obviously the school budget for the improvements is around $975,000. The base bid, which is the girls' locker room only, is at about $850,000. Phase one at alternate one, which is those gender neutral restrooms along with the custodial closet, kind of that reconfiguration of that area, is $311,000. And the phase one at alternate two, which is the office conversion on the other end of the boys' locker room, is about $150,000. We do recommend that, in any budget that you're holding 5 to 8% of the budget for potential change orders. This is a renovation. We hope for no surprises, but there always could be surprises when you start to tear in and gut things like we're going to do in this room. All the costs here do have an escalation applied to them of approximately 1% based on this going to construction here this year. And then currently the costs do not assume any hazardous waste abatement needed. We are going to do a screening likely within the next week or two, just to confirm that. I know there was some abatement completed in these spaces previously, but we're still going to screen it and make sure that there's not a lurking surprise there from that perspective. So, if you were to add up all the phase one and the alternates, it's at about 1.3-ish million. So definitely more than the budget. We hope on bid day that there's some lower costs, but at the end of the day, we have a pretty good history of what these things cost and how the contractors are going to bid it. But so those are the costs currently for that phase. And then from a schedule perspective, once we get the authorization to proceed off of these 60% drawings that just were kind of presented, and the budget, we'll start to develop the construction drawings, with those construction drawings hopefully being completed by the beginning of April. And then it would go to bid basically beginning April to the first week of May. And then get an award by the end of May, where the contractor can start to plan their attack and start to order materials and equipment that have long lead items. As soon as school is out, they would get in there and start doing their renovation work, gutting and getting, hopefully the long lead items are en route and ready, so that by August 29th, that locker room's back up and ready for use when the students come back to school. We do say final completion October 3rd, because we're assuming it's going to be a race to get to August 29th, and there's going to be punch list items and things that they may need to come in and do after school hours or weekends or however to get to the finish line. But we allotted another month just to get that buttoned up and project closed out. So that's just a general schedule overview.
Thank you, John.
And that's all I have.
It would be great to target for completion by August 29th. I understand that exactly what you said in terms of like maybe some final things, but it would be great to target for that. Thank you so much for helping us get there. Any questions for CHA on this plan? Okay. Annie, do you need us to vote on this?
I don't believe so. Chris, can you correct me if I'm wrong?
No, I don't believe they need to vote on it. It was really just to give you a better look of, what was being done, certainly much more than what I presented last time. And you did already send Fred a text just to kind of confirm his thoughts on the movement of the rooms. If he has a second thought about it and said, oh, that does make sense, maybe we can do that. Would you prefer I switch them back to the way they were before so the home team could come out the side of the back of the gym rather than the front that they're at now?
Seems like an advantage for them to come out from behind.
I personally think it would be, I think it would be a better plan.
A better reveal, a better, sort of, advantage to come out from behind.
Especially where that's our student section.
Right.
I'd also just add, I love the idea of that just because when you come out where they come out currently, it's like where all the people are coming into the gym, and it's just a clutter and they have to wait for people to come by. And I just think it would be great for them to have their own space.
Completely agree. All right, great. Thank you, Chris, for looking into that. We're sure that you'll arrive at the right decision, whatever it is. And thank you for giving us the in-depth look. John, thank you for joining us. And we're really, really excited about this. So let's get going, I would say. Thank you so much.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're moving next to the topic of the budget, fiscal year 26. Annie and
Yes.
Chris, please take us through it.
So this is brief. Our public hearing, our goal is to have the public hearing for the budget on March 24th. Just to reiterate some of the updates from the town and some of the constraints that we're facing. So the town expects revenues to increase, total town revenues to be distributed across all town departments, roughly 1.4 million between FY25 and FY26. About 824 of that will come from property tax, state aid, local receipts, enterprise receipts, and about 514 of that, 14,000 of that will come from free cash, special revenue funds, and stabilization. So it's important to note that the town is working really hard to support all of the departments as well as it can. The total budget request, there are links in the agenda for you and the public to see. These were the documents that the town treasurer and the interim town administrator presented at a joint meeting of the Select Board and Finance Committee on February 5th, Wednesday. So you can see in the second link there that the total budget request from all departments equaled roughly 3.4 million. the town had to reduce every single department's request. Obviously, they have closer to 1.4 million that they have to distribute across all departments. Also, their health insurance costs have increased by approximately 18%, and other things that they can't, not take care of, for example, debt payments. So they have obligations that they have to meet, and health insurance, that's non-negotiable, those increases. We actually, the town of Hadley, as shocking as that is doing slightly better on those health insurance increases than some of our neighbors around us. So the school department budget, original request that we discussed with the town was just under 3%, 2.99. At this time, the town's recommending a 1.7% increase for the school department, which would equal a total dollar increase of $136,000 to local contribution over FY25 local contribution. So this will be tight. And Chris and I are already looking at and identifying. We will reduce everything that we can without compromising the quality of programs and services. And as I said, we anticipate having a public hearing of the budget on March 24th. The obvious question is, well, how can you possibly do that? We will be more reliant on school choice. Our school choice incoming numbers right now in FY26 are 144, and our school choice out at the moment is 41, I believe. And so our school choice is in good shape, and charters are staying relatively stable, although the tuition for those is increasing. So Chris and I still feel that the budget that we will bring for public hearing is responsible. Again, it's very reliant on school choice, but we don't do that lightly. And I will just quickly show you what we're seeing in school choice trend-wise. You can see fiscal years, and I'm sorry, this is by grades, is what's over here. And so you are seeing these increases of greenish choice in Hadley Elementary. The subtotal is up here to 66 to 23 to 78 and 24 to 90 this year. School choice out had remained stable. We had an uptick of about 5 students choosing out from Hadley Elementary this year. You can see Hopkins Academy also 44, 46, up to 54 choice in. So that's a significant percentage increase of attracting students in, and quite a dip on choice out from 32 last year to 21 this year. And some of our districts where we had seen a lot more students exiting and attending, we're seeing that change as well. This workbook will be part of the budget presentation, and at that time the school committee can dig into more detail, including by every single town what we see happening. So that's
Thank you, Annie. I really appreciate that you're working closely with the town. We were both at that select board meeting where they discussed how revenue projections at the statewide level are lower than expected, and we're all going to need to, tighten our belts. I'm seeing this through MASC across the board. It's a big concern, especially with uncertainty at the federal level as it relates to any federal funding that our schools might get. So I really appreciate you being proactive and working with the town and making sure that we're all coming in at where we need to be in order to be responsible fiscal stewards of the school budget. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move next to choice seats.
Yep.
Annie?
Yeah, so you can see in the link there, our goal is typically to have 50 students at every grade. We are recommending next year that we have 44 students in grades 1 and 2, right? So 22 in each classroom. And that is in order to provide a slightly lower student to teacher ratio at a critical time for literacy and social and emotional development. But other than that, you can see the goal is to hit 50 students at every grade level.
Annie, I'm really glad that we are taking that into account. We've always seen a little bit of, struggle at that age group, and to just really make sure that we're serving students and supporting educators in the best way I think it makes a lot of sense to have lower that enrollment number around first and second grade. So thank you for that. We don't need to vote on this, do we?
You actually do. We can't put it in the paper till you do. That's a law. So it's
Okay, I thought so.
Seats as presented.
So do I hear a motion to accept the school choice seats as presented?
Can I ask a question quick first?
Of course.
Incoming, Annie, I'm sorry if this is a silly question. Incoming class for K, it says 6.
Yes, that's because there'll be more than that. But we, with pre-K, that takes a little bit longer. So our pre-K students are not necessarily, some of them are all Hadley residents, some of them stay. So it takes a little longer for us to.
So those choice seats will be determined at a later time?
They'll be determined at a later time, but we just, if we have, correct. So right now we wouldn't say that K is open, right? We'd say every other grade is open, even though we only see 6. So we wouldn't open our seats yet in K. We would come back to you and say when we have firmer numbers and say now we want to open up our seats for, no, we want to open up our seats for kids. Right. So we'll come back to you with our fixed seats for kindergarten. Thank you for pointing that out, Tara. But right now you see nothing there until we have a firmer understanding of what our resident income is. And as you know, we just had our information night and other things. So I anticipate that I'll be back to you on the 24th saying now we want to also open up for kids.
So good point, Tara, and I'll revise the motion to say, do I hear a motion to approve the first grade through 12th grade choice seat availability?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, very good. Thank you, Annie. You have the next item as well, which is the calendar.
Yes, so you have the calendar in front of you. As I said, the contract requires if teachers are going to come back prior to August 26th, that the HEA vote that. About over 70% of the HEA said that they would like to have teachers return on Monday, the 25th. So as you can see with that calendar, it also was created after I asked all of our surrounding districts to share their winter break, their February, their December, their start dates, their end dates. This is a calendar that's closely aligned with the schools around us. I'm very glad that I did that because I had a rather harebrained idea initially that would have had students coming back on Friday the 2nd. And tell me what a great idea that is. Just one day, come back. I'm sure attendance would have been banner at my first pass at this. So thankfully, I asked my colleagues to share their calendars with me. And I said, oh yeah, there's an idea. I might take Friday off and come back Monday. So this does look like theirs.
Terrific. All right. Any questions on the calendar?
I'm assuming that it's 8/25, 24 or 25 staff return and
Yes, did I
20
put 24 in there? Yes, my
Yeah. That's okay.
Okay, yes, but that's what it should be. So 8/25, do here. Yeah. Yes, we'll fix that. Thank you for catching that. Yes.
All right. Do I hear a motion to accept the calendar as presented?
So
So-
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move next to the follow-up discussion on the train presentation. And huge thanks to Sarah Ross, who highlighted for us by email some of the pros and cons of going with an ESPC, an energy savings performance contracts. And again, these are entities that are governed by the state, and they work off of. They're also sometimes referred to as Guaranteed Energy Savings Agreements, and GESA or GESAs, I guess. And so we are contemplating bringing Trane on as an energy service company for us, an ESCO. And we heard their presentation in January. They made a lot of good points about managing the process. We are wading through a lot of ambiguity as it relates to the geothermal project, when to bring on solar, how much this should cost, what are the right steps, what are the energy savings, building envelope tightening, all of the package of possible energy enhancements we can do, all with an idea of achieving a net savings to our heating expenditure and our electricity expenditure. And ESCOs are designed to manage that and drive performance and get paid when the performance is actually achieved. When there is savings, they get paid. And so their main job is to be really crystal clear about current levels of usage versus projected usage, what that savings will be in order to drive home their own revenue. And I, for one, think that wading into such a substantial and important geothermal project without people who fully understand how to drive results and are economically incentivized to do so, I see how important it is to align with an entity like an ESCO. And I would love to get school committee thoughts on both the train presentation as well as Sarah Ross's comments about performance contracting and whether we think this is right for Hadley. So I'd love to open it up for discussion with the school committee.
And I'm also going to very quickly share, because it was a question that you all had last time, and I'm not sure that we had a thorough answer for it, but the communities that currently have done performance contracting with an ESCO to manage energy savings projects. And so I do have that. I can show you. There's about 53, and these data are not from a vendor. These data are from the Department of Energy, DOER, Energy, and whatever that R is for. It's a state agency. But so there are 53, and you can see these are a mix of municipalities and of schools, VOCTECs or school districts. So currently, again, this is DOER's website of who's doing this kind of.
Great. Thank you for that, Annie. That's a substantial number and geographically dispersed throughout the state. Helpful to know. So school committee colleagues, would love your thoughts.
I like the idea that they would be overseeing and would be the contractors on this, because I feel that, Chris and Annie would end up picking up the slack and picking up, looking for the contractor and who's getting paid. And, I just feel like they have enough on their plate, and to have someone or an entity who can manage all that is huge. It's basically, the difference between being your own general contractor and hiring a general contractor. And I think that I'm sure that Chris and Annie would be up to it, but I don't think that we should put that on them. That's just my personal opinion.
Thank you, Christine. I really appreciate what you said there about when you have an entity like Trane, and Trane is the company that we're evaluating as our ESCO. They have so many connections and contacts. I imagine that when they're putting out bids, they're much less likely to get overinflated estimates because they're trying to drive their savings, and the expense part is a key factor in that equation of how much savings there will actually be. So they would be in a much better position to hold those contractor feet to the fire, if you will. I imagine, their interests are our interests, and they are a much bigger entity to drive those interests forward. So thank you for that. Paul, you had
I know, Paul, I just want to be clear to the community too. I know we're referencing Train because Train did that presentation in general about how performance contracting works. If the school committee determined that this is the direction that we wanted to go in, we would have to put together a request for qualifications. So that's why tonight you're having a discussion, and then you would vote based on who responded to the RFQ. Train may respond. Train has done no additional work with us or doesn't have access to any information that isn't publicly available, for example, our scoping study. But there are many of these ESCOs, and so several people could apply, and then you folks would evaluate an award.
Thank you. Really good point. Appreciate that. Paul.
Thanks, Andy. That was my first point, is like the first step is to put that out for solicitation. I agree totally with Christine's point. I think these are complex projects, and we would want an expert on our side to design that. I do still have this question about the capital solutions, and Sarah and I talked about it, and she references it here, where she says that the energy services company will bring their own capital. That we basically signed a 20-year contract and agree to pay them over that duration. That wasn't the sense I got with Train, and I thought we asked them that point blank, and they seemed to demur. So that would be something good to clarify. I mean, it does seem like a fundamental service that they should offer, and Sarah says that that's her experience, but that's not what I thought we heard from Train.
One of the things, so in any of these companies, that it's a good point to clarify. So there are multiple options, right? So part of it is deciding what are all of the opportunities for energy conservation measures. You did a small slice of that when we looked at the scoping study, and we just narrowly focused in on HVAC, right? And you went through a series of air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, a number of things you looked at. And then we dove a little bit deeper into ground source heat pumps. An energy services company, because a lot of the payment comes from avoiding cost or saving money over them, they're going to look at everything. As Train talked about last time, they're going to look at everything. And then certainly a municipality could say, well, we're going to finance this with our own capital, we're going to go out to bond, we're going to do whatever we're going to do. And one option is accessing private capital of an ESCO, which I think Sarah said sometimes the upside to that is that you don't have to come up with any upfront money. The downside to that is that money may cost more. So that's the trade-off. Those things, I believe, I looked at the boilerplate template for a request for qualifications for an energy services company. It seems like some of that is also spelled out in there. Some of the things you would evaluate and that we would be asking to be explained, presented as part.
So we would bring the total cost of the project to town meeting, and would they approve that?
They would have to approve anything that they have a financial obligation.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. So if we get a third party fund, that provides the capital that we're as a school committing to pay, what do you bring to town meeting?
I don't understand your question.
So if we basically go to Train and say, Train, do this work, we're going to hire you. You're now bringing the funding. We're signing a contract with Train to pay them for 20 years to on that project. Are we taking any of that to town meeting?
So I believe we would have to. I could very well stand corrected, but my assessment, and Christy, feel free to jump in, but my assessment would be, I do not believe that we have the authority to enter into any long-term loan relationship. We are not a standalone entity. At the end of the day, the entity that is on the hook for that is the municipality.
Right. Okay.
You could be wrong, but I would be shocked if we had the ability. I mean, we don't have tax levy authority. We don't have bonding authority. I do not believe
that makes sense. Yeah.
Chris, do you have any comment? Chris Desjardins?
Yes, actually, and I apologize. I just started to speak and my computer froze and I lost my internet for a second. But I would agree with what Ann said 100%. The town would have to, pretty much, it's a liability for them for the next X amount of years. So they certainly would need to be, made aware of that and vote to approve it.
So one more point, and I'll stop talking. But I think generally this is a really good idea for us, because I don't think any of us have the time or expertise to do such a complex project. But B, the other factor here is the tax credits, right? So they note, and Train notes in there, that they'll get the rebates and the tax incentives here, which is, another thing that'll facilitate us, and they'll be aggressive to get the most. Just we're in a flux period, right, where the tax incentives are a bit uncertain, and so. But as I think about the timeline here, hopefully that'll get resolved, and. So just something to note too, that it'd be good to have another party that's really attentive to those rebates, as opposed to just us having to dog that, because it's a difficult changing scenario.
Really appreciate that. And I imagine that most of the ESCOs are large entities that can do the federal government lobbying around investments that municipalities like Hadley would be making, and why it's important to honor those obligations. They have much more pull than an individual school might. So yeah. Thanks.
And I also think that in that, one of the things that we find, when folks respond and someone starts working to identify where are the opportunities for savings, what does a scope of work look like? Remember, there was options for phase scope of work. That again, we could go back to the town and see if it makes sense to really get a lot more buildings on board. Of course, some of driving down the cost has to do with demonstrating savings. So the more buildings you have, particularly inefficient buildings, of which there are probably many in town. That not all, because we have some new build, but some that are inefficient, inviting the town back into that conversation and seeing if it makes sense. Is to encompass all of the energy conservation measures, applicable ones across the town. We could do that as well. One thing I will make sure that I put in the weekly email that I send and then put in a public document is the Department of Energy Resources does have a wonderful FAQ on energy management services. I didn't link it into the agenda at such a late date, but I will make sure that I send it. It seems like a lot for an adjustment to the agenda, and you folks, that might be helpful. You folks can look at that. I was doing some research today, and that's when I found it, and I'll also put it in that email update that then the whole town can see too when I put it into the
Like one more comment. I saw on your list, Annie, that Deerfield, Greenfield, East Hampton were on there. Might it be helpful to talk to some of your colleagues? You can get
Northampton too, I think. I saw.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I will do that. Whatever this right now, just thinking of it, and good deal. Okay.
I haven't said anything, but just to chime in, I agree with all of you. I'm in support of going this route. It seems very logical because it's a very, very expensive project to do. So it seems like a logical step to have somebody who does this on a day-to-day basis help navigate. So I'm in support.
Thank
I
you, Chair.
agree with her.
Thank you, Aisha. Ethan?
Yeah, I totally agree with all the points, and Annie, you kind of touched upon the thing that I was thinking about is kind of how does this also potentially help the town in other ways, and also I just think about the many conversations that are going to be had to have about a project of this size and potentially the size of it, if it relates to other parts of the town getting involved, and just having people who are super knowledgeable around these things and these projects and all of the resources that are going to go into it, having people that can be at these meetings and have these conversations with folks, I think will help, and also take a little bit of load off Annie and Chris, as Paul, as you mentioned, and Chris, you mentioned, like, it's a lot of work that we're looking to do, and it's going to take some time, and having those people support us and provide the resources, but also be able to speak up in some of those town meetings or whatever we may have in the future, that I think it'll be super helpful.
Thanks, Ethan.
Okay.
So Annie,
I'm sorry, it's connected to this, if I may.
Sure.
So this RFQ, it sounds like the general impression is move forward and put out an RFQ. That doesn't require a vote. You don't vote until you decide if you who you want to award it to. But if you recall that next bit, the next steps about geothermal project, so scoping study, that original scoping study, assumed the project would cost roughly 3.7 million with a net cost of just under $1 million for ground source heat pumps. Remember way back in the scoping study, right? And then after the engineering and design work, that was the CHA presentation that we had last month. And they said an estimated project cost of 9.54 million and roughly 5.5 million after incentives. Now, the next step with those designs would be technical assistance, which drills down into much more precise what cost savings could be realized. That next step is a cost share. Mass Save, I think it was, or whoever Eversource, is a cost share that at most would be 50% ours, 50-50. It could be as low as 30% ours, and will probably cost between $10,000 and $30,000. And a decision the school committee, you probably want to direct us, do we want to do the RFQ? It's one order of doing things. Put out an RFQ, determine if we get responses that you're pleased with, and you decide to award a performance contract to an ESCO. And then at that point, bring the ESCO into this kind of next step of TA. Do you want us to be running parallel tracks? Do you understand what I'm asking? I just want to make sure you know what we're doing.
I think if we're going to go the route of an ESCO, we should have the ESCO driving the report, because I think the ESCO is going to be the sanity check we need around the estimates that we've gotten to date. And we're flying blind until we have people who really understand what they're doing. And I'm seeing nods and agreement from my school committee colleagues. I also think, Annie, the next step, although we don't have to vote it here, is to present it to the select board and to really tightly scope that we're asking for an ESCO for school committees needs in particular, because we're, I think, as an entity and a sub-entity of the town, we're much farther along in evaluating these possibilities, and that they would help us arrive at lower cost savings. And we've been at this for a lot longer. I would really hate to stall our progress for another year as the select board builds consensus amongst its many stakeholders to gather the momentum they need, that the town of Hadley is going to be doing this as well in parallel to the schools or in addition to the schools. And I think it would be a much stronger argument for them to work through the schools to prototype what an ESCO would be able to achieve for cost savings, and build a case from there with the rest of the town to adopt that same strategy for the additional buildings that we have across town. So in that way, we're not asking them to start driving and building consensus, but rather to approve us moving forward with an ESCO to really help drive results with a geothermal and solar process, to drive results and to de-risk that scenario by managing the return on investment.
Can I just add to that, when we talked with them last, we talked about including the elementary school as well. So I don't know how that ties in, but we would want to make sure that that's included, that it's not specific to the high school.
That's a really, really important point. And also I would say, I mean, it's really the school assets, right? So I know the green building, the greenhouse is, much smaller footprint, but it is our school asset, and we should be thinking of it holistically so that we don't have one lone bill of something that is, outstanding because we never thought of it as a comprehensive thing. Great. So there isn't a vote. You do have our support. You'll let us know when the ESCO piece is presented to the select board, and if you want any of us there to build a rationale, work with us to do that.
And I imagine we will put together the RFQ. Best practices would have it out for at least 6 weeks. So there's nobody accusing that we rushed it and somebody had inside information, not the case. And so we don't want anything that would appear that way. And I'm assuming that after you folks talk about, yeah, it looks like this proposal is what we like, that's when Chris and I would be talking to the select board about, because we'll have that proposal of, am I hearing you correctly, or do you want something different?
I wonder whether there's some groundwork that could be laid in advance so they're familiar with what an ESCO is, why we're even soliciting those bids. Maybe we could share a recording of the train presentation, a copy of, this YouTube video with this discussion, and just get them oriented so that we're not 6 weeks plus down the pathway and then they're like, wait, what? We don't, so that there's, when we have one that we want to recommend, that they are fully up to speed and have asked all the tough questions and are in a position to approve or approve with modification or whatever they want to render.
Okay, got it.
Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you all. Great discussion. I look forward to proceeding. I'm optimistic. And so glad that you brought this to us as a possibility, Annie. Makes sense. Okay, we're moving next to the let's see, Next Steps Geothermal Project, GSHP. We already talked about that, right? So nothing to say there. We're going to wait and work with the ESCO to do that. Policies for first reading. Christine.
Okay, so you have the Hadley policy for competency determination for graduation. That is we have for a first reading.
Thank you. Is there anything to say about that in particular that we should think about?
I can jump in if it's helpful, just because the acting commissioner provided some information, at the board meeting last week. So we know that question 2 amended the competency determination that we no longer will use MCAS as a graduation requirement. And now what we are recommending is in line with what it looks like the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education will be voting on in the future as new regulations, and that would be that students would demonstrate competency mastery through specific coursework, 2 years of English, geometry and algebra, and biology or another science. Down the road, Board of Elementary and Secondary Education will be, I think, adding some competency requirements there. Our current graduation requirements, those are already the graduation requirements. So essentially this competency determination policy reflects our existing graduation requirements. School committee approves those graduation requirements. And there is space in there for students who come from another country, so their transcript may look different. Students who come from another district that don't offer the same courses, and students who don't pass these courses at the level that we've set as a standard. There are still ways through educational proficiency plans that they can meet the standard. It is not line up with what Bessie vote on in a month or so.
Great, that's very helpful. I know we require students at Hopkins to take a personal finance class in order to graduate, as well as to take a civics course. Those are 2 in my tenure that I recall we made we made it a requirement. We thought it was really important for students to have that. So how does that fit with this competency determination?
So it's important that we separate graduation requirements and competency determination. So to get a diploma, we said you have to meet both, and there was only one way to meet competency determination previously, and that was through MCAS. So we still have these graduation requirements, but this competency determination is the state says, we expect you to demonstrate competency in English language arts, and the state is going to say, and we think that means 2 years of an English language arts course. We expect you to demonstrate competency in mathematics. They're going to say that's algebra and geometry. And we expect you to demonstrate competency in science, and that is going to be biology or one of these others. And so we're not changing our graduation requirements. Those will still be over there. I would, the public, I'm glad you brought this up, Humira, the public might say, well, why wouldn't we include more of our graduation requirements here? No, because you have to do both, right? So to get that diploma, you have to meet our graduation requirements. Pulling more of those into competency determination adds, I think, more layers for students, especially now, who may be nervous, saying, okay, can somebody just tell me what I have to do, that I'm a senior now and I need to know that I'm going to get my diploma. Does that make sense? They're two distinct things, not because we want them to be, but because that is the regulations of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
I think I understand. Any other questions or comments from my colleagues? Okay.
I just have one question, actually, now that Humira, you asked that clarifying question, and I'm trying to read through quickly. So this competency determination, so for students who need, I don't know, I'm lacking the words you used, Annie, but kind of an alternative pathway to make sure that they meet graduation requirements, that we help students out along the way with whatever aids are needed. Is that addressed in here?
Yes, so if a student does not meet the minimum grade requirements that we have, then they would have this educational proficiency plan. So they have other opportunities to demonstrate competency in English, in math, and in science. If you're a transfer student whose courses don't line up with what we teach, we would do a transcript review. If the courses aren't the same, we would do a transcript.
Okay.
Okay, great. So Christine, this is first reading, so you'll have it back for us next month for second reading, and we can continue the conversation at that time. And there are a number of other policies that you also have here for first reading. Do you want to take us through them?
So I'm sorry, I'm trying to 1, 2, 3. The first 3, if you look at them, essentially, we're reverting back to the 22 policy after the federal court ruling on Title IX. So this is because of the change in Title IX. That we are actually reverting back to the already approved policy from 2022. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you. We're just reverting back.
Right.
Okay.
So, and that is for the AC, ACR, ACA. The policy, the sexual harassment policy that has been approved by the lawyer. And there really haven't, I'm trying to see what has changed. I'm not sure, Annie, what?
I can help with that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you recall, you had all these policies come before you because there's a full scale change and then that reversal. Policy
Right.
ACAB, all those ACs are interrelated. And although ACAB is talking about sexual harassment, it still had to be brought up to date to make sure that there was no language that now was not in line with the return to previous Title IX. I think it's worth mentioning because I know I've heard from a couple of parents. I just want to be clear to the public that the school district will always comply with federal and state regulations and statute. Title IX, what it had been expanded to include gender identity under the protections of Title IX. That was now reversed, but in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, gender identity protections still exist. There's been a number of things that have come out from our Attorney General reminding us of that. Laws in Massachusetts had gender identity as a protected class prior to any changes to Title IX under the Biden administration. And those protections on the state side still told, but how we would investigate those or respond to them would not be under Title IX, it would be under something else, it would be under civil rights or state statutes. So all the language had to be cleaned up and lined up so we weren't referencing things that no longer apply to what's being discussed. Hopefully not.
Great. Thank you. So, school committee colleagues, let's consider this all as reading, first reading. Thank you for reviewing it in detail, and we'll revisit it at our next month's meeting, actually later this month, in order to approve those policies, if that is what we're going to do. Christine, there are some here for second reading. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us about those?
So we changed a couple of things on the international students policy. We essentially took out, that. So we basically said that the school committee will determine the number of international students that will be accepted each year. We took out the part where we'll accept eligible international students each school year unless based on regular admission, etc. And we changed the age because this way it would cover middle school, or actually, yeah, middle school or 8th grade, I think. So we changed it to 14 from 16. And other than that, it is essentially the same.
Great. And Annie, I see a note here that says if policy committee, subcommittee recommends policy, we need to include the up to number language.
No, it's actually, okay, I'm sorry. Those notes just tell you what we were talking about as the
Right.
policy subcommittee, but no, it's not, because you can just vote it annually like school choice.
Okay. Any questions or comments on this policy? Again, this is second reading, so we will be taking a vote tonight.
Just curious, I'm guessing they just changed the age for sponsorship that is allowable?
No, I think you can have students come in whenever organizations would bring them over. I think we were trying to, 14 is actually 9th grade, really?
Is it 9th grade?
13, yeah. 14, 15, 15, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18, yes. It's 9th grade, and so it's getting them in the first year of high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve this international student policy? Is there a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, terrific. Moving on to the, let's see. We have the elimination of policies FA-E. Christine, you want to tell us about that? This is the Facility Development Goals, Title IX.
Do you want to help with that too? That's as simple. As soon as you see Title IX, yeah,
Right.
it's no longer up to date. So the attorney said it's got to go.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any question or comment on the removal of this policy? Okay, seeing none. Do I hear a motion to eliminate the policy FA-E?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Right.
Right, terrific, thank you. And we're moving on next to superintendent updates, Annie.
Yeah, just two things. One, really important. Want to take a moment to recognize and congratulate Dan Breland, English teacher and department chair at Hopkins Academy, who is this year's recipient of the Pioneer Valley Excellence in Teaching Award. Dan began working at Hopkins Academy in 2011. He's a skilled and dedicated educator and leader. Ms. Camuso included the following comments in Dan's nomination form. Exceptional teachers are in it not for themselves, but for their students. It's not their content that matters most, but their ability to connect with, inspire, and improve the abilities of their students that does. They do not shy away from a challenge. They embrace it and collaborate with others to solve it. While he would never tout himself as such, Dan Freeland is an exceptional teacher who made a positive difference in the lives of, makes a positive difference in the lives of his students and colleagues. His ability to reach every level of learner, to lead by example among his colleagues, and to continue learning every day himself is something for all of us to aspire to. Congratulations, Mr. Breland. We're proud of you and happy for you. And the second thing, of course, we can just read the superintendent update, but I wanted to ask the school committee, we did get that cyber awareness grant. It's not financial, but we get free training. The entire staff is doing it. Would the school committee like to be looped into that? And I do think it's good for the town's insurance. So it would be through your school emails. Basically, we're going to try to trick you every day to open things you shouldn't open, do things you shouldn't do. And then I'm going to get a report, see how many, including myself, did all these things we're not supposed to do. What you will get at the end of it is also lessons and a curriculum that you can share with family and friends about how to avoid these kinds of things. Personal advice. I will tell Ms. Bigda that he can start trying to trip you up, if they can add you to the list. And we have until December once the course is open. It's 10 hours total. We have until December.
Annie, I think it's incredibly important that all of us are trained in this. We, as individual school committee members, are important, sort of like portals of additional, access to the schools. If we are like any other teacher or student, if we were to click on something, we could bring the whole house down. So it is vital that we are taking part in this as well. Thank you for including us.
Good. I'm telling them right now. Start tricking the school committee.
Bring it. Okay.
Thank you.
We're going to move next to the business manager reports. Chris.
Okay, I have a few reports for you today. The first is the revolving accounts report. Some of these balances look either low or the same as last month because the January revenues were not yet posted by the town. So things like athletic, we did get revenues in January because we have basketball ticket sales. They just weren't posted yet. So when they're posted, I will update these figures. Lunch, we did get the January payments, but it was received in February. So I didn't include them because technically it wasn't in on the 31st of January. That would move it into the positive, which is certainly good news. Preschool, again, did not get the revenues posted. Student activity and school choice are accurate, and Hadley Kids, again, you see it dropped about $6,000. That's because, again, the revenues are not posted by the town. I can answer any questions anyone might have on the revolving accounts.
Thank you, Chris. I'm seeing no questions, but I do want to comment that at MASC, I've heard that the funding for lunch and breakfast may be at risk. So there is a possibility that might, in this next new administration, might revert back to an era where we're going back to school lunches and requiring payments, unless we, we decide to do that differently. But just something for us to think about, colleagues, that there may be a time when we're asked to think about funding for school lunches and breakfasts. And I, for one, have really appreciated not having to nickel and dime our families and, have balances and all of that. We know that students that are fed do better in their classes. We know that there isn't a stigma of students that can't afford to pay, and how that creates a dichotomy amongst students. It's really nice to not have to do that, but we may be asked to think about that again in the future. So it's the only comment I'll
In that vein, Humira, which I think is a good point, it'd be curious to know how much this costs. I can't really tell from this revolving. So on monthly average, how much is lunch?
That's a good question. Chris, you may or may not have that, but maybe you can come back with that information.
The reimbursements we get from the government for lunches it probably averages between 25 and 35,000 a month, I'd say. A lot of it depends on the number of school days in the month because that's the number of lunches served. So a month like February with a short month, a week of vacation would be less. A month like March will be more because there's no holidays. It's a 31-day month. So, but I would say it averages, probably somewhere around 30,000 a month.
And that number might be tricky too, because since we have the availability to have no cost for lunch, I wonder how many more families are utilizing school lunches. I'm guessing we probably aren't tracking that, but I'm just curious how many more families are having kids get their lunch at school, given that it's free versus prior to.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I know I haven't made a school lunch since COVID. So I think probably the vast majority. It would be good to ask around though, anecdotally, to see what percentage of students are still bringing in lunch from home. Any other questions for Chris on this report? All right, Chris.
Okay, the next report I have is the budget expense report. Again, as always, when I present this, there are accounts that are higher than projections and accounts that are lower than projections. And over the course of the year, they pretty much balance each other out. We did do part of the transfer to school choice a couple of months ago. Not the complete amount that we budgeted, but $700,000 of it was transferred. Again, there are still a number of items that are in the budget that need to be transferred to the grant. They're not necessarily expensed in the budget, but the purchase order at the beginning of the year was put to a budget account rather than a grant account because the grant wasn't approved yet. And so that is showing up as an encumbrance and, in the grand scheme of things, shows up as an expense in the budget fund. And as these expenses get actually posted, I move them over to the grant account. So, I'm up to date on moving expenses, but the encumbrance is still there. So things like special ed transportation, for example, are high right now. And it'll continue to decrease over the course of the year. Obviously, by the end of June, we'll have them all completed. But still, we're in good shape. Obviously, we still have $3.2 million left to spend in our budget, so I don't anticipate any problems at all.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions for Chris on the expense report? All right, seeing none, you want to tell us about grants?
Sure. So some of the expenses from grants have ramped up from the last time I reported this. You can see, there's a few grants that are fully spent. Certainly more if it is spent down than a couple of months ago, which is good to see. The ESSER 3 grant, which is the second one down from the top, that one's basically paying $250,000 to the geothermal design. We have all but about $35,000 of that expensed, and obviously it's all encumbered for the design work, so that will be fully gone. All of these others, I don't anticipate anything not being used in full. Some of them, I'm looking at something like the early college, the 460 grant down towards the bottom of $50,000. They sent us an email about a month or so ago saying that there was extra money and we could apply for more. So it kind of worked out great because Anne applied for $20,000 additional, and then she went on vacation, I believe, and another email came that there was more money. So I applied for $20,000 on top of what she applied for, and they were both approved. So that $50,000 is actually $90,000 now. So that's very nice to see. So that will get adjusted. We just got the okay on that late last week, and the new budget was filed on Friday. So some of these things are constantly moving, but it's certainly nice to see additional funds coming in. That's for sure. I can answer any questions anyone might have on the grants.
Hey, so
I was just gonna say, it is updated in that summary sheet though. So also there, remember, just so the school committee knows what these things pay for or what the grants are. And the hyperlinks take you to the RFPs for everyone.
I really appreciated this document. Thank you for pulling it together. Paul?
that's all. I wanted to say thanks because I was wondering how many of these funds are federally supported, so potentially at risk. And then the one thing too might be helpful to add is a column of the duration. Is that, I don't see that there.
Because assume they're always, the exception is the fiscal year.
So
Because in FY 25, the spend down is June 30. Sometimes they'll have an 8/30 end date. So sometimes we can use money in the summer, although that usually takes a bit of a move around. But I'll make a note. I'll put a comment if it's a multi-year, but
Okay.
even multi-years, you have to be approved for continuation because the state just ends the budget and then it's subject to appropriation following.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions for Chris?
Well, just one more question on this. Even the state money, might some of that state money have federal backing?
It might have federal backing, but the state's already drawn it all down. So you think of that way, they're giving it to us. They've already, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, they've pretty much taken it, right? And so that's a special, it'd be like if they said to us, once Chris draws it down, if the governor said, on second thought, I could kind of use that, well, good luck to you. Once we've drawn it down, they'd have to come in and take it away. So those state funds, the state has drawn it down.
And then the federal dollars here that are listed, do we have any sense of the
Yeah, so you see on the federal, okay. So again, we've already drawn down supporting newcomer and homeless, framework implementation. We've drawn all of those down, even though the state essentially got the money from the federal government. The ones that are in lavender, we just haven't heard back yet. The skills capital technology equipment, even though I submitted that back in May, they still haven't responded. Although anything having to do with college and careers, and again, that's why we really started digging into this, it's a high priority in the across administrations, federal and state government. I don't necessarily see those dollars going away.
but there's, I don't know, a couple 100,000 maybe of just strictly federal dollars, maybe two.
Are you looking at the top there, the competitive ones? Fiscal fund code 127, 127 2B, all those.
Yes, yeah.
So again, those are already, and I'm pretty sure that, Chris, you've drawn down a big chunk of that money, but the state, even though it says federal, it's a type of like, where did the state get the money from? The state drew the money down from the Fed. We've drawn the money down from the state.
Okay, so we literally have the money already.
We have the money already, unless it is something that, again, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but unless it's something, for example, some of our title grants are tied to salaries, we can't expense against the grant because we haven't spent the money yet, right?
Yeah.
So some of these things, if we can't spend the money, Chris draws it down right away and expenses and puts the expenditure.
That's just my only concern is if I've heard lots of stories about people expensing to contracts that are already awarded to the feds and not getting reimbursed.
Yeah, what they do, basically, it used to be on a monthly basis. Now you can pretty much draw down anytime. But they want us to only draw down what we've expended so far. And what happened was when the federal grants started to become somewhat in jeopardy, every district in the state got a little nasty gram from DESE telling them to stop drawing down your federal grants in full, because part of the drawdown process is, you fill out the form, you write how much of each category has been spent,
Right.
you check a box saying, I certify that I'm telling the truth, these are fully expended, and then, you submit to draw down the funds. And we didn't do this, although I have been known to do it in the past, but we didn't do it. And I guess a lot of districts were just saying, oh, I'll just say my, $1 million 240 sped grant has all of a sudden been, spent in full.
Okay.
And obviously DESE was aware of that. So they kind of told us to knock it off. But that's how it typically works, is you draw down as you spend it.
Okay.
These are all good questions. And one thing I'm mindful of is if we add up just the dollars next to federal funding type, that comes to 260.5. And while we may not be at risk of not having that funding this year, it's probably money we can't count on for next year. About 260 of this list.
Of these, I would say, right. So I would imagine that I think supporting newcomer and homeless would be in jeopardy. That some of those, I see those other grants, all those 127. I don't necessarily, although I take that back. No, actually I take that back because I just get an email recently saying that there may be continuation funding for some of these priorities. So let's just say remains to be seen. I did get notice of potential continuation for some.
Great. We can be delightfully surprised.
Yes.
Terrific. Thank you. All right. If there are no other questions, we can move on to the final one. I believe there's a geothermal project update. Do you have one, Chris?
That was what we talked. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, we do have basically a request from the designers. They had reached out a few weeks ago, and I just got today the kind of final request on it. But they're basically they overspent what they anticipated on spending at this point in time on the project. They're at the 90% level, and they're kind of overspent by $25,000. So they asked if we could basically take $25,000 from their construction oversight portion, which is the next $100,000 of the project, the phase 2 for them, and move it to phase 1 to cover that. Now there's some pluses and minuses to that. The plus is that, overall we expected to spend $350,000, and that would still be what we spent. The minus is if we go with, say a company like Trane or something, they would be doing the construction oversight. So we wouldn't need CHA at all to do that. So, I did tell him that I would bring it to your, to the meeting tonight and see where it goes. The reason for the overruns, most designers, and it's funny because I was talking to someone this morning and I said, usually they go 6 to 8% of the construction cost would be their fee for design work. And he actually said to, in the email tonight that their typical percentage is 7%. Of course, that, when they budgeted out for this, it was based on the $4-ish million cost for the project. Now it's a $9.5 million project. So, he said, obviously it's much bigger than it was before, at least in terms of cost. And therefore that 7% of $9.5 million is much bigger than the 7% of $4 million. But again, I just can't go and move that money around and essentially spend the extra money. So just looking for your thoughts and approval either way on it.
I welcome thoughts and comments from my colleagues on this.
It seems like what are we going to do? What if we don't give them the extra 25,000? What happens?
Yeah, it's in the contract, and basically, they put it in their contract to prevent. Not that we did this because we were pretty much given the cost, but to prevent someone from going to them and saying, "I want you to plan this $1 million project," and then all of a sudden it comes in at $4 million, and they're like, "Well, wait a minute here. We based our fee off the $1 million, and you were nowhere near." So in the contract, it does allow for that. To be honest with you, I did reach out to our attorney. I'm just waiting for a response from her on that because I don't know. If we tell them no, can they stop at 90% and just not finish?
It's a lump sum contract with set deliverables, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Whether we pay them now or pay them, they have to deliver it based on the cost that we've contractually agreed to. Right?
Correct. The thing is that, the first phase with 250,000, they basically want to make that, and the second phase was 100. They want to make that 250 275 and make the second phase, from 100 down to 75. So it's not increasing the total cost, but it is increasing phase one. And the phase two work, again, all that construction oversight, that's not all going to be done by them, because obviously if we use, another company, they're going to be doing that. And so CHA wouldn't be needed at all for that portion.
So let me understand. So they will deliver the phase one deliverables. They're saying, which they committed to 250, now they want 275. They're
Correct.
still on the hook to deliver the phase two deliverables, which we had budgeted 100, but now we just have 75.
Yeah, the phase two was only if we want them to do phase two, basically, because I broke it up into two phases because we don't want to be on the hook for the second phase if, say, funding did not go through for the project. So if, once we got the design work and the cost estimates and went to the town for funding approval, if that didn't pass, then we can tell them there is no phase two.
So did they commit to do phase one for $250,000?
They did.
And then now they're asking for 25 more, and we're not sure whether we're going to do phase two.
Correct. Yeah.
We might pay them 275 for something they're contractually obligated to pay 250 to do for 250.
That is correct. Their contract does allow for, it says if the price increases by more than 5%, we can negotiate, to reflect that. Negotiate doesn't mean you can just outright charge for it either. It means negotiate. So
why not just say you have a contract to deliver something for 250, deliver it for 250?
I can certainly go back and tell them that.
Because I don't want to impede our ability to make a decision on phase two. That'd be my opinion. Is I don't understand why we'd suddenly up that contract to $25,000 if we're not sure about phase two.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, really good point, Paul. Any other comments or questions about it?
Just that I'm curious about what the lawyer has to come back with to say. If maybe you can bring kind of Paul's points to the lawyer as well and bring that up, that's how the school committee feels.
Yeah, here, basically, I also got an email from the locker room designers with the same kind of message last week. And he told me he would have the pricing for us, where he stood by the end of the week last week. That came and went. And yesterday I sent him an email and I said, hey, you never sent me the pricing. I need that. I wanted to forward that along to Kim as well and say, this is what he's looking at. And so this morning I got a response to my email saying he hurt his back. He was out on Friday and he'd have it for us today. I still have not received it. So, but they're looking at the same kind of thought. He said, they were over budget. The project was bigger than what we had anticipated, et cetera. So I'm, just to give you that heads up, they're also talking about it from the other end. Certainly not an email I enjoyed receiving, that's for sure. And, so I forwarded the entire contract, the bid specs, everything to Kim last week and just emailed her this morning and said, I'm sorry, I don't have their, cost that they told me they would send me. But what I want to know is we've got three options, right? We can either pay them what they want, we can negotiate a different amount, or we can tell them no. That's the three options. What are the consequences for each of those options? And so, unfortunately, Kim was not able to get back to me today on that. So we're kind of just in a waiting. If you're leaning towards saying no, I can just pass that along to him.
I'm with Tara. I'd like to see what the attorney says.
Agreed.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Chris.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Let's get through the rest of this agenda. Approval of revised custodian job descriptions. Chris.
Yeah, so basically I have the custodian, the lead custodian, and the head custodian, just updated job descriptions. Basically the purpose of this is to kind of clarify who reports to who. And so, this way, let's say a lead custodian and a custodian at HES would report to a head custodian who's Jose. At Hopkins, they would report to Jeff. And it really wasn't clarified. It just said it reports to the facilities director, but Jeff doesn't work at HES. So, we just wanted to really clarify. And, a regular custodian would report to the head custodian, certainly at HES. In Jeff's absence, they would do the same at Hopkins. But this really just kind of cleaned them up, took out a few minor things. I sent them to Kim, and she had a couple of minor changes that we incorporated into these, and we're just looking to get them approved by you at this point in time.
Great. Any questions or comments for Chris on this? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the adjustments to head custodian, lead custodian, and custodian?
So
So
moved. Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Thank you very much. All right, action items. We've approved the field trip, the preschool rates, the school choice seats, the international policy. By the way, school choice seats minus K, you'll bring that back to us, Annie. International school policy. We've eliminated a number of policies. We have, do I hear a motion to approve the payroll and expense warrants for January and February 2025?
So moved. Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right, and a motion for the approval of the school committee minutes of January 27th.
So moved.
Second,
Seconded.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Terrific. We have already approved the calendar as well as the revised job descriptions. Let's move next quickly to school committee updates and general announcements. For reporting on playground, CPAC, and CES is Tara.
Yep. So CES did not meet this past month. In February, we'll meet again in March. So I forget if the meeting's before or after ours. I will send out an email update if it's afterwards and report back the following month. CPAC, they met on Wednesday night, and I was unavailable due to work obligations. For their meeting, they've transitioned over to virtual meetings in the evenings, trying to accommodate some more parents and get more involvement from the community. I'm just a quick note on them. I'm just really proud at how well they're up and running. It's a very challenging group to keep going on a yearly basis. And so they're small but mighty, and they're very dedicated to providing information to our community. So it's really great. Playgrounds, I don't think I have any updates right now. Chris had received, I think, 2 estimates so far on surfacing, and he did send me both of them. I need to review them and get in touch with Chris so that we can still be on track to get that surfacing done over the summer.
Terrific. On the finance side, I haven't been involved in any meetings except for the one where Annie and I presented. Well, Annie presented and I watched her present to the select board. The select board received the information really well. We happened to be at a meeting where the finance committee and our town manager, acting town manager, talked about the financial issues of the town. So we were able to modify and adjust our expectations based on that. So thank you, Annie, for continuing to work with the town and presenting what you did earlier. Fields, Paul.
I just said Chris sent the latest mock-up for the language for the signs, and Chris, and just looking through it, there are some things I'd want to change. It's just a couple typos, so I'll send that to you. Other than that, Chris, anything else to add?
No, that's basically it. And thank you. Sure, I'll fix those if you send them over.
All right, great. Capital, Christine.
Nothing to report.
Okay. Ethan, we heard about a number of policies earlier. Is there anything else to report there?
No, nothing at this time. We'll get back to you guys next month.
Okay. For general announcements, David Phil is not here. And I don't know that he's sent word of any announcements, Annie. Okay, great. All right. Well, we're at the time where we're going to move next into executive session, and the chair will entertain a motion to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation, given that an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on bargaining or our litigating position of our public body. And I also declare that we will not be returning to open session. Do I hear a motion for that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Roll call. We got a roll
Call
call.
vote. Okay, great. Paul,
Yes.
Tara,
Yes.
Ethan,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
and Humira, yes. Terrific. Thank you. So we're going to be moving next to a breakout room for our closed session. But before I depart, I will mention that our next meeting date is March. No, it's not. It's not
It is,
March.
you know what? That could be messed up. So it is March 24th. That
It is
would be
March
the March
24th,
meeting. Is
Right,
March
the agenda says March 3rd, but that's because we
It-
copied
I
it over
messed
from the last.
Sorry.
So March 24th, Monday, March 24th. And will we be having a policy meeting at 4:30 on that day, Annie?
That depends on negotiations. So that's what I have to check on while we're in negotiations. So I'm not sure yet.
So TBD to the public, but our full school committee meeting will be at 5:30, Monday, March 24th. All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and I'll go ahead and make.
Thanks to Aisha for staying the whole time. It's wonderful.